So I was introduced to my next guest by a mutual friend, Aaliyah Hulse, and usually when I meet people from this particular friend, they're always exciting, they're always interesting, they're always vibrant, and they're always a surprise to me. So I went on YouTube and I started researching this new person, and I was so enchanted. We talked. She talks about food. She talks about life. She talks about purpose. She talks about relationships. She talks about love, and it's just incredible. So when we got together and we talked, and there wasn't this topic that we couldn't touch on that was just really cool. So Chef Alina Z, even though she's a board certified health coach and detox specialist, she's created what Harvard Bazaar calls the best diet in the world. She wrote a book called Single and Hungry, a realistic guide to food and self-love. And even though if you go to her YouTube channel, which I'm going to put a link in the show notes, the mouth-watering foods she comes up with, she actually taught me how to do spaghetti squash so simply. It's incredible. So I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but Alina has such a great philosophy on love and relationship and food and self-love that I thought this is a great topic for us to talk to. So Alina, thank you for being here and having me get to share you with my audience.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So we need a place to start because I can talk to you about anything. But for me, the wrestling with food and health, with food and peace, right, and food with self-worth has been a lifelong battle. And it's only recently that I'm putting down my fists. Talk to me about what where you come from with food and how this has become a passion for you.
So I also have had a turbulent relationship with food. I mean, when you're little, right, you're the baby, you're like crying, you're hungry, like you're in pain, and then your parents bring you food, and it's like this relief. And so like from your early memories, subconscious memories, you associate food with something that's soothing and loving, right? And then things happen, life happens, and a lot of us, me included, would go to food for peace, for love, for feeling that like, like women can relate a lot to this, like eating a piece of chocolate, you're like, oh my God, it feels so good. Like for that minute, for that second, whatever, you have that peace and happiness. But then the problem is that because we have so much stress in life, you can, I will speak for myself, I would often go to food, specifically sugar and dairy, for peace and love, right? And if you scientifically look it up, dairy is a lot like heroin to the body. It actually numbs you as heroin does. I've never done heroin, but that's what I read. And then sugar gives you a high. It's like, hey, you feel really good. You have this like energy. So you start doing this legal drug, and then people do it with other things like pizza or anything.
Hold on, slow down, because I'm fascinated. So ice cream is dairy
and sugar. Yeah, it's a drug.
No wonder.
And so is pizza, because what happens to wheat when it's refined? What happens
into sugar?
Goes into sugar. So people are addicted to all of that stuff for a reason, right? Now, we get all these things from our flings with food. But the thing that fascinated me as I started looking back into it, you start having a relationship with food. It's not a fling once in a while. You start having those things daily, sometimes a couple times a day. You go for food to get that high. And then it becomes an unhealthy relationship, because frankly, if you are seeing food that is so strongly impacting your chemical balance, it becomes an abusive relationship. Because after you have it, like let's think about relationships with people, right? You go out on a date and you're like, oh my God, that guy's so hot, or that girl is so hot. And then you get this high, and then you see them again just because they're hot, but there's no substance, right? Because there's no substance in food we're addicted to, right? Great. Like pizza and ice cream, like there's no substance. You're like, oh my God, it's really hot, like makes me really feel good. And then like you start seeing them, and then after a while, like that person becomes a narcissist, and then, or maybe they have always been, like ice cream and pizza. And then you're like, well, I feel really shitty afterwards, but I need another hit, right? But in a relationship, your friends will be like, listen, like that person is abusing you. They're doing all these things that make you feel shitty. Like, do you really want to see them? And a sane person will probably think about it, feel it out, maybe break it off, right? But with food, we don't look at it that way. And so I talk about food that loves you back, loves your body back. Like, does your food love you? Does your food actually treat you with kindness? Like, would you actually marry that person if that person had the same qualities as that
Oh
food.
my God. So pizza, I love this. So pizza and ice cream are the narcissistic, abusive,
Yeah,
hot people. And then
yeah.
broccoli and green leafy vegetables.
They're the nice guy, the nice girl, right? Who's gonna be like taking care of you. But here's the thing, like, okay, so we made it like black and white, but there's also a gray area. Like you can have an affair, a one night stand with a pizza or with ice cream. However, what I would think in a perfect relationship world, right, in human relationship, you would want to marry a person who A, makes you feel like all saucy and hot, and makes you feel good and safe and peaceful. So you want and ideally find those things in a person. Now the good news is that it's much easier with food. It's much easier than food because you can have ice cream that loves you back. You can have pizza that loves you back. You can have all those foods that you're like, oh my God, it makes me feel amazing. But also after that, you're like, whoa, I feel really great now. Like it's much energy. So it's finding, I love helping people finding that perfect relationship with food that is a mutual loving relationship, a reciprocal relationship.
This analogy that we're in right now is just tickling me because one, I love the fact that your broccoli and your green leafy vegetables are not going to get mad if you have an affair with pizza or
Right, they
ice cream
will.
every once in a while. So like if you just keep it as affairs, you get to have that open marriage, right?
Exactly.
And then come home to the loving, kind whole grains and healthy foods. But the other thing is, because again, when you watch your videos and you look at your recipes and all the things that you do, is you do take those healthy, wonderful, good old girl, good old boy foods and make them saucy, make them delicious. And that's that's the same thing as relationships. If you want that relationship, even if you marry the nice guy, the nice girl, they're going to be bland. It's going to get old. You're not going to be able to sustain it. And you
Exactly.
have to, at some point, learn intimacy, learn how to really be in relationship with that nice guy and nice girl. So your relationship with the food is the same thing. And that's why I love your approach.
Well, so here's the thing. When you have a relationship, a marriage with a person who's a nice person, right, and kind of bland, somebody will say, well, why don't you spice things up? Right? So you can literally spice things up with food and like kale, for example. Oh, let's take for example, cauliflower, right? A few years ago, cauliflower, you didn't really see any benefit to it because like white vegetable and you're supposed to eat green vegetables or vegetables with color. So you don't really see any value. And then cauliflower tastes like blah, like bland, whatever. So you don't see any value there. But if you look at wheat, right, it's the same thing. It's white, it's bland, it has no nutritional value. But then you dress it up. You make a pizza crust out of it. You make gnocchi out of it. You make bread out of it. So people are like, oh my God, we can do the same with cauliflower. We can dress it up. We can spice things up with cauliflower. So now cauliflower is pizza. Cauliflower is actually yummy pizza. Gnocchi.
Cauliflower pizza has changed my life. I will admit.
Yeah. And so it's like you just dress it up. Like if a person is nice, but they don't dress well, you're not going to dump them. You're just going to go be like, hey, honey, why don't we go shopping and like see what looks really good on you, like do a makeover. And the same with food. Like if you feel amazing when you eat broccoli, but you are bored of like bland broccoli. And I will tell you, like, I could not live on bland broccoli all the time. I have to spice it up. So I'll put it in some sauce or I'll put them in pasta or whatever, or kale, like put in a smoothie. So you don't have to settle for less, but you always, as a smart person that you are, obviously you're listening to this podcast and we're doing this podcast, so we're all smart here. You're gonna want something out of your relationship. You want something that gives you something back. So it's really like if you look at it, time and money is same with the relationships. That like investing your time and money and energy into relationships, you do the same with food
I,
for your own good.
this thing has just really tickled me. So now I want to go the opposite direction now because I've had an abusive relationship with food, but I've been afraid of food. And I
Yeah,
guess, and the same thing with my relationship life since I started out having really only destructive, dramatic relationships, right? And learning to have deep, intimate relationships now. When I had fear of food Like nothing, everything was bad for me. I read, so wheat is bad, sugar is bad, dairy's bad. I shouldn't eat any of these stuff. I want to stay thin. I'm going to be 58 years old. How do I stay thin? I'm afraid of calories. I'm afraid of this. And all of a sudden food became dangerous for me.
Yeah.
How do we make friends with that?
Okay, so I was at this detox school, and I went twice for the first level, second level. The first level, I saw this really hot guy, and I was like, oh my God, like he's so stuck up, he's so hot, like what an asshole, right? I never even talked to the guy. And then the second level, I was like, oh, I know him. So I sat next to him. He turned out to be the nicest, friendliest person. But just because he's hot, I was like, oh, I was afraid of him. Like literally, I was afraid of him. Just same with that you are with food. And I think the most important thing is curiosity, openness, freedom. It's like when you meet somebody and you're like, you know what? Can I swear here? Can we say F it?
You
Can we
can
say,
you can
okay,
totally swear.
okay, okay, fuck it. I'm just gonna dive in, And the same thing you do with food. You just go and you try a little bit, and you see, like, let me get to know you a little bit better. Let me see how you are for me. And I'm writing my second book right now, and it's called Life According to Fashion. Okay, so I will put it in a fashion perspective, not a relationship perspective, but fashion. I mean, I can do both, but I just want to like take it a
No,
little
your
bit
your
different.
your analogy game is so high.
Oh,
It's
thank
awesome.
you.
Go for it.
Thank you. Thank you. So you go to a store and you see this shirt and you're like, oh my God, that shirt looks amazing on the mannequin. I don't know if I can afford it. I don't know if it's going to look good on me. You have all those things. Well, why don't you just go try it on? Maybe it's on sale. Maybe that will actually fit you. Maybe it won't fit you. You try things on, right? You don't commit to them. So the same with pizza, bagels, whatever. You just try them on. You have curiosity and you see, how do I feel after that? Did it make me gain weight? Did it make me scared? Sometimes when you try something on, you're like, whoa, this shirt is like way too hot for me. And then you sit in it and you're like, wow, you know what? This shirt is really good on me. Like I'm hot. And you just ease things in. And I think the same with food. Just try things on. Like go to the fitting room in the store. You do the same with food. And then if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. I mean, obviously don't try things that you're allergic to, that are dangerous. Like, use your mind. You're not going to put shoes that are 3 sizes smaller than yours. You don't do the same with food. Like be careful, but do have curiosity and freedom. I think that's the most important things.
And I'm really all giddy about the analogies, and I'm making these great neuro associations. But the truth is, what you're talking about is consciousness,
Yeah.
right?
Oh my God.
You're
Absolutely.
you're
Absolutely.
so you're talking about being conscious of the relationship. Whether you go into an abusive relationship, and how do you start to look at yourself and say, you know what, I don't want someone in my life to treat me this way, and I don't want food in my life to treat me this way. And how do I break the cycle? Because these addictions are real, to sugar and dairy and all this stuff. Like part of it is not your fault. Like it's
Oh
in
yeah.
everything, and we're addicted to it, so it triggers that mechanism. The other part is we have these problems where we don't want to feel, right? Like
Yeah.
sitting by myself without my phone, right, without something to read, just sitting, sometimes is not fun, because that inner dialogue and all that stuff. So if you're not comfortable, if I'm not comfortable with my life, and if I'm not comfortable with myself, then that rush of that addiction to food is totally going to fix it. So consciousness and self-love, you really are talking about self-love.
Right. Well, so that's actually brings me to a deeper point now here. So we talked about superficial, stuff, but yes, consciousness and being aware of yes, there is something that is controlling me, right? And then being aware, what is the benefit that I get? Because everything you do has a benefit, right? So you have a feeling, you don't want to feel the feeling, you eat the food, you don't have to feel a feeling, you feel good. So happiness is usually the end result. That's what you want to win in life. You want to be happy. And if you keep covering up things that are inside of you with food, like frankly, you're never going to be happy. You just won't. And when you're ready to take that step, with my clients, for example, we do it maybe 2 months in, because in the beginning when I work with my clients, we're like, oh, let's try this food, and it's all fun. But then feelings come up, and addictions so there's 2 types of addictions in my world. Not for me, but from what I understand, physical addictions, because some people actually have chemical reactions and they're addicted and they cannot physically control it, right? Like allergies, and they're just born with them. But some people have addictions because they have such strong traumatic experience that happened to them a long time ago, that food covers it up. Food actually, so let's think about this way too. When you have anxiety, where do you feel it? In your belly, right? When you have emptiness because you weren't loved as a child, it's in your belly. And you probably weren't loved as a child much because your parents were very young when they had you and you did not come up with a manual. So you did feel unloved at one point or another. And it's all in your belly. And when you eat food, what does it do? It goes in your belly, and
Right.
for a moment, it makes you feel stuffed and satiated and
And
full.
and again, it calms that, and so you get that association that I can make this anxiety go away if I just put something in
Exactly.
my belly.
Exactly. But ultimately, I have a program online called Peace with Your Body, because, peace comes from within. Yes, like you can eat all the cauliflower you want and still not be happy. You can still be unhealthy. And a lot of people look healthy, but then and happy, and then commit suicides, or they overdose, or whatever happens, because deep inside, like whatever work you do or whatever you're trying to cover up, there's something from your childhood. It's for everybody.
Always.
Always, right? But the good news is that when you were born, when you were 2 months old, you were perfect, happy, complete, like nothing was wrong. So it's kind of like you're here, you need to go through this darkness of like getting all that crap out to get to the bottom, that you always been perfect, everything always is well, you don't need anything. You can desire some things, but you don't need anything. But my God, it's a pain in the ass to sit with yourself. So that's why, I mean, you and I have our jobs to coach people, to help them get through that. I know, I don't know, like I love when my clients cry. I have to hide my smiling, because when they
Right.
cry, I'm like, they remove
Pay
all
dirt.
of the
Pay dirt.
pain. Oh my God, they remove all the pain, right? And then after that, they're like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I don't need to numb anything. Because like Michael Singer in his book Untethered Soul, he talks about like you have this thorn, this pain from a long, long time ago, and then you start to cover it up. Like, oh, I'm going to put this thing here on the thorn so I don't step on it. But now I need this contraption so that I don't hurt that thing that's covering up the thorn. And so like you have to build your whole life around the thorn. And same with food. And food, I think, because it's a direct link to your belly, and your feelings are a direct link to your belly. People confuse when they have an emotional problem, they are trying to fix it with a physical solution. And it just doesn't work. It's like a band-aid, but you have to dig deeper. So unfortunately, there's no way out except through it. And then you can come out another side. So crying through it, feeling through it, having somebody actually hold your hand physically or hold your hand virtually. I do sessions with clients and they cry and they're just like, how much longer am I going to cry? I'm like, honey, I don't know. You
Right.
just have to cry and cry. And then I'm just here holding that space and walking them through it. And then like, oh my God, now I feel amazing. But yeah, every single challenge I think that we have in life comes to that, to the traumas that we had as a child, because they dim our vision and they create a different life in front of us. I mean, we see a different life in front of us because we see it through the lens of child abuse, trauma, rejection, not being good enough. But again, when you were 1 month old, you were perfect, complete, nothing was wrong, and everything was love. So
I love that you bring this up, especially like on the Mastering Midlife podcast. Nobody's getting through life. Nobody's getting through life without dealing with their humanity.
yeah.
You can shortcut it all you want, and you're just going to push it out, push it out, push it out until it makes you have to deal with it, which is what I believe is the midlife
Yep.
crisis, right?
Absolutely.
uh so no matter what we're talking about, whether we're talking about foods, whether we're talking about relationships, whether we're talking about business, you're gonna have to deal with your stuff if you want
Yeah.
to make it through midlife, and so that the next chapter is something really cool. But you got to go. I have not met a person who hasn't had to go through that, and I wish I could find a way. And you can bounce off of this and go find the 3 steps to happiness or the 5 steps to be in, have better relationship with your food. But until you deal with yourself, it's just going to be the next article, the next fix, the next this. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah. And you know what? I love this quote that said, those people who say they have their shit together are standing in it. And I met this guy, he was like 23 and he's really hot. I mean, for some reason, I know a lot of hot guys. And we just went out for a
Anybody who's
drink.
watching the video knows why you attract a bunch of hot
Thank
guys.
you.
Uh,
Thank you. But we just went out for a drink, and I dive deep. Like, I don't do small talk for that long. And before I know it, he's telling me about these traumatic experiences, and he goes, Alina, but you don't understand. Nobody in my circle has problems. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, everybody, just because you're tall and hot and rich, people just are intimidated. They're not going to tell you your problems. So if you're listening and you're thinking, Alina, but you don't know me, like, I live in this society, like, nobody has problems here. Yes, they do. Anthony Bourdain, hot,
right.
wealthy, Kate Spade, Robin Williams, like, nobody's immune to it. Everybody's got something. And I think when you talk about midlife crisis, I have this visual, which you were talking about, like, people have a little bit of shit when they're little, right? Like, somebody says this, somebody says that, then you start building up. And then by the time you're midlife, you're like covered in shit. And then you like, can't breathe anymore. And then when you like go, oh, fuck this, like, I gotta clean it up because it's suffocating, literally. And I have this ring. I'll show you. It's an aquamarine, and it looks like an engagement ring. Is with diamonds, and I have a wedding band. And I did this project for myself called 100 Days Self-Love Affair. And for 100 days, I was just doing things to make myself feel good without needing anybody to do it for me. And then one day I was like, you know what? I got to make a commitment to my body, to my soul, to love it, to cherish it in sickness and health, right? And death is not going to do it. Well, death is going to part my body with my soul. But until then, right, I have a commitment to me, to love myself, and to take care of me. And I think that's the most important thing, the most important commitment you can make, because it's the hardest relationship. You can never leave yourself. Some people try with drugs, alcohol, food. They live outside of their bodies, outside of their life. But when it comes to midlife, and especially for men, you wake up one day and you're like, what the fuck? What did I do? What is my life all about? Who am I? Is it really worth it? What's my legacy? Like, there's so much trauma descending into this darkness of figuring out who you are. So making the commitment to stick with yourself through thick and thin, to find that peace with your soul, to find that peace with your environment, to find that peace with the food. But it all comes down to you. You have to, you have to start there. You can't go anywhere else.
Amen, sister. Thank you for tooting the message here. It's so important. So
Yeah.
we're recording this just as the coronavirus is starting to the wave is building, right? The travel bans and
Yeah.
people not going to work and all kinds of stuff. And we were talking beforehand about purpose, and you wanted to share a little bit because this is going to air right smack dab in the middle of all this.
Yeah. So, I mean, my desire is that it's all over and people are healthy and it's all done. But even if it's all over and it's all done, I want everyone to look at the experience and realize we all have fears of dying, right? Whether it's fear of dying in 2 weeks, in 1 week, tomorrow, or in 20 years, the truth is that we are all going to die. But the hysteria that I'm seeing, like, people don't want to die. And I'm thinking, well, why don't they want to die? Like, are they really living? And I'm thinking, well, intuitively, they have a purpose. Everyone has a purpose, some kind of purpose. There is something meaningful in their lives, whether it's family, work, whatever it is. But people forget it. And maybe this will be a wake-up call when people say, I don't want to die, and they have a second chance, and you will actually live your life fully. It's like that movie that I watched a couple times a year called Last Holiday with Queen Latifah, when she's told she's going
It
to
was
die.
such a good movie. I found it by accident. It was such a good movie.
Yeah, I watch it all the time. I travel with it. Like, it's one of my favorite movies. And she says to herself in the mirror at the end, next time I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to love more. I'm going to take more risks. I'm going to live my life fully. She wanted to have a restaurant. She wanted to give back. She had passions. And I find that every single person who is going to 9-to-5 job, who is sleepwalking, who is not really alive, even they have a purpose, but they just need to understand that the reason why they don't want to die is because they want to live. And then if they want to live, why do you want to live? And if there is a reason why you want to live, then do that. Like, this is the wake-up call to actually live. to find out your why. Why don't you want to die? Why do you want to keep going? If it's your family, then spend more time with your family instead of being on your iPhone or iPad all the time and working all the time. But if you want to work to provide to your family, do it consciously instead of like, oh my God, poor me, I have to go to work 9 to 5, I have to feed my family. Like, be excited about it, because obviously you didn't want to die because you want to go to that work, you get to work, you get to provide for your family. Celebrate it. I think it's such a big wake-up call to really see that everybody has a purpose, just need to wake up. And I don't remember who it was who said most people die when they're 25 years old, but they don't get buried until they're 75. So everybody has a purpose. Just people forgot. Maybe this coronavirus scare is actually a wake-up call to live to your purpose, to awaken.
It's really, it takes things like this. It takes someone close to you dying or often for us to kind of go, what am I doing with my life? Because
Yeah.
I find people people are easily lulled into sleep, lulled into routine, lulled into not, breaking out. And it just seems like too much work to break the routine, the agreements that you have with people, to try something new. So I
Yeah,
agree with that.
but what's the cost? What's the cost? And I feel I'm so lucky. Honestly, I feel so lucky I live in LA, because I can go out to drinks with my friends, be like, oh, this is a lovely red. And then we'll dive deep into the purpose of life and what are you creating? How are you contributing? Are you being aware of what you're doing? What is your vibration? Like, we talk about that stuff. And so, like, yes, it's possible for people on East Coast or in other countries to wake up. And if you don't have friends around you who are woken up, you can go online, like your podcast, get connected with people who listen to your podcast. You can create a new snowball of purposeful living and living happily. I think everybody just wants to be happy, you know.
I think everybody wants to be happy. My question always is, what are you willing to give up to go be happy? What are you willing to risk to be happy? So it's always that balance between the fears that we make up and the fears that are real, to what we're going to do. But Alina, I can talk to you for hours and hours
Yeah.
and hours about everything. Uh, I want people to go to your YouTube channel. You can have a relationship with Alina just by watching how she cooks, how she goes out to eat, and how she treats herself, and how she, just so much wisdom and all kinds of stuff. And the book that's already out is Single and Hungry, which you can get, and then her new book will be coming out. So all your links are going to be in the show notes, so people can get in touch with you.
Fantastic. Yeah, and you know what you just said about fear and stepping out? I want to share with you on my phone. I have a relationship with my phone, clearly, because I'm like with it all the time. We look at each other like daily. But my screensaver is always changing. And I put a quote this time: faith and fear both demand you believe in something you cannot see. You choose. Bob Proctor.
I love it.
So I want to live with that. So just have faith, believe in something unseen. You can have a relationship with food. You can have a relationship with yourself. You can have peace and happiness. You can have it all. But everything you want is on the other side of fear, and you just have to dive through.
I love it. Thank you. And if you want to know how to simply deal with a spaghetti squash,
Yes.
there's a video for that. But if you want more of a relationship with Alina, there are so many ways to get in touch with her, so many ways to get her brilliance. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for sharing with me.
Thank you for having this show and helping people to get through, because it's a tough way through the darkness, and people need support, and they need your light.
I
So
appreciate that.
thank you.
And to you wonderful listeners, I love you. I love your body, love your soul, love yourself. That's going to be the new theme of the Mastering Midlife podcast, is how do we find self-love, and have a great rest of the day.